The department was pushed to our limits fighting this summer's wildfires. We were in an all-hand-deck mode for most of the season. The eclipse and other extreme wind events tested a stretch system further. We did not actually slow down until fire season closed in October. Our complete and coordinated system proved its worth again this fire season. In particular, our partnership with landowners, operators, and contractors and the severity resources provided by the legislature were critical to success. We could not have done it without the help of our partners, including the state fire marshals, National Guard, state police, our federal partners, including the U.S. Forest Service and Bureau of Land Management, local county and city leaders and emergency responders, and many other state and international partners. That said, this fire season reinforced what we already knew from the 2016 Secretary of State audit and the fire program review. We do not have a sustainable fire organization for these kinds of seasons. The 2017 fire season marked the 5th out of the last 6 years of extreme fire severity, complexity, and long duration. This summer, we've once again had to delay or spend work in our other divisions as we focused on fires. We were stretched to find resources for our fires and keep our incident management teams staffed. Frankly, we're an organization built for the average fire season a decade ago. We need to change that if we're going to continue to protect Oregonians, communities, and forests from wildfire. We also need to significantly increase the pace and scale of treatments to make Oregon's forests more resilient to fires and examine policies that are slowing the work down. And with that, I'll turn it over to Ron.
Good morning, co-chairs, committee members. Thank you. I'm Ron Graham. I serve as your Deputy Chief of Fire Protection for the Oregon Department of Forestry. I'm pleased to provide you with this update to the fire season. And as Peter mentioned, we just recently ended our official fire season, although we continue to see fires as recent as last week. The 2017 fire season started off and was predicted to be an average fire season due to the wonderful snowpack that we had and adequate early rainfall. However, that changed quickly, as we discussed and heard a little bit already. The summer high temperatures and the rain stopping, some areas not seeing rain for 60 to 70 days, quickly changed that average fire season prediction and turned it into, by all measures, an above average fire season. And all measures are acres burned, cost, and number of fires. All were above average this season. There were some pretty severe impacts, and we heard about smoke impacts already, and just wanted to give you a little bit of a graphic there to see the smoke impacts on September 4th, soon after the Eagle Creek fire started. And you can see much of the state is under severe smoke impacts, not only from fires burning within the state, but fires in British Columbia and all the surrounding states. It seemed like no matter what the day was, there was wind coming from any given direction where there were fires, and the smoke impacts were very severe to the public. The public was not the only one that suffered the smoke impacts. The agencies fighting the fires also suffered from those smoke impacts. Many of our aviation aircraft resources were unable to fly or effectively perform due to the smoke. Sometimes they were landed and grounded at airports, unable to even get off the ground. While there is a positive impact to smoke on fires, oftentimes heavy smoke will keep fires down and reduce the fire activity. However, when that smoke does lift and clear out, the fire activity picks up and intensifies. So it's a very minimal benefit, but it also impacts our ability to see what's going on the ground and make good strategic and tactical decisions. So as I started out by saying, it's an above average year statistically. And you can see by the number of fires that we've had, we're about over 100 fires above our 10-year average. Currently, we're tracking about 1,069 fires. And again, the 10-year average is 938 fires. Human-caused fires continue to be a concern to us. And human-caused fires were on the rise again this year and contributed to about 72% of our fire starts. in a typical year, the lightning-caused fires that we have actually contribute to more acres burned, usually about 80% of the acres burned in a given year. However, this year, that wasn't the case, even with the great number of lightning fires that we had. Lightning starts were up significantly. By mid-June, we saw more lightning this year than we saw most of last season at all. But this year, lightning-caused fires weren't the huge driver. It was about equal number of acres burned as far as lightning-caused fires and human-caused fires. They were closer this year. So when you look at our ODF protected acres burned for this year, as we stand right now, we've burned over 45,000 acres on our protected lands. That's up about 12,000 acres above the 10-year average. So again, a significant departure, 100 fires over our 10-year average, 12,000 acres over our 10-year average. And there was really 4 big fires on ODF protection that drove that acreage this year. And I will speak to these fires in a little bit. The Chetco Bar fire, that was a lightning-caused fire. The Horse Prairie, which was a human-caused fire. The Horse Prairie fire was the one fire that was entirely ODF protection, and it attributed to 16,000 acres burned, and it was over around half of our cost for suppression this year. And then the Eagle Creek and Millie fires. Eagle Creek, as we know, was human-caused, and Millie was lightning-caused. Those 4 fires alone were the big drivers in the number of acres burned this year. All of our other fires combined on ODF protection only amounted to 5,237 acres. So those 4 fires were what drove our activity, in addition to helping our partners, which I will speak to in a little bit as well. As you know, in Oregon, the fire funding framework is really broken down into 3 areas. Our base fire funding, or that which funds our fire department, our initial attack, if you would. The severity program through the special purpose appropriation, which funds our aviation resources that we strategically place across the state and use to rapidly assist ground firefighting resources. And then the large fire funding, which is a combination of general fund and Oregon Forest Land Protection funds, including an insurance policy with Lloyd's of London. There were some really good success stories this year when we look at this fire season. We heard about the impacts and the acres burned and things being above average. However, some of the success stories were the use of prevention and education outreach teams during the solar eclipse before, during, and after. And actually that interagency effort provided so much education and outreach to folks. We saw a decrease in human-caused fires during the week surrounding the eclipse. That was pretty significant. We were geared up for an increase in human-caused fires. That sustained effort in prevention was a huge factor in that. But just like we're not a sustainable organization for fire suppression, as I talked to the interagency partners involved in that, most would agree they cannot sustain prevention and education outreach measures like that as well. It took a huge effort. So where are we at with costs for this fire season? This is the 3rd piece that's above average for this fire season. As we are to date, ODF's gross large fire costs are at almost $39 million. Our 10-year average is about $34 million, so again, above average. 4 of the large fires that we had qualified for FEMA Fire Management Assistance Grants funding. That, and along with billings to our federal partners for fires that we suppressed on their lands, will reduce our net cost to about $33 million. And as I said, you can see the funding framework split in the previous slide that shows the 20 million shared large fire costs. When you do the quick math at 32.9, almost 33 million, we've exceeded that obviously by 12.9 million. Our special purpose appropriation, as I mentioned, the success of the eclipse effort in prevention. Our severity program, again, was very successful. We continue to use that program and grow that program. This year, it was challenged. We had just enough, barely enough resources at times. We brought in many resources ahead of time during the eclipse. As I said, we were planning for an increase in human-caused fires. So we brought in resources from surrounding states and our Canadian partners. Had we not utilized and mobilized those resources when we did, I think we would have seen even larger numbers of acres burned and fire costs this year. What ended up happening soon after the eclipse is kind of when those warm temperatures and that rainfall effects of being shut off really came to bear. We saw instantly a lot of fire on the landscape, and our preparedness level was at the highest level in the country at 5 for a record number of days. What that means in terms to resources is that we're competing. We're competing with all the surrounding states and fires to get those same firefighters, as well as we are competing with 2 hurricanes. So the severity program was stretched to its limits, but again, it is very, very important, and it really helps in keeping those fires at 10 acres or less. This year, we were at a 95% success rate for keeping fires at 10 acres or less. This just gives you a little bit of a picture of the fires on the landscape this year, and this is focusing on primarily ODF protected lands or fires that we were involved in. And you can see the map is very busy. What it doesn't show you very clearly, but if you look at it closely enough, are all the other little fires, the fires that you don't ever hear the name of, those fires that were stopped successfully on initial attack, kept at 10 acres or less, managed by local Type 3 incident management teams, and successfully kept from needing an incident management team in a large, costly, extended attack. As I mentioned, the 4 driving fires on ODF protection were a major factor in the fire season, but also the fires that were around us, and I'm sure we'll hear more about this as we continue. We were involved in several fires on the Willamette and the Deschutes National Forest, the Whitewater Fire. As I mentioned, the Millie Fire was an interagency fire. The Horse Creek Complex, the Jones Fire, and the Rebel, to name a few. These all posed significant threats to ODF protection and thus required significant contributions of ODF resources to manage those interests and protect us from those threats. Similarly, in southern Oregon, we saw much of the same. The Umpqua North Complex, the High Cascades Complex, and the Miller Complex once again stretched our resources to the point of that all hands on deck, and that fire was our primary focus, not able to continue and complete some of the agency's other work. Transition now just a bit to those 4 main fires that I mentioned earlier. The Chetco Bar.
We're going to have to ask you to go quickly.
Sure,
through this.
we'll wrap it up.
Yeah.
Yep, the Chetco Bar, the Horse Prairie, and the Millie and the Eagle Creek, again, driving fires that were the majority of the cost for this year on ODF protected lands, as well as the majority of acres burned. As the State Forester mentioned, we couldn't have done it without our partners, the Military Department, the State Fire Marshal's Office, State Parks, and others came to the need when the time was the highest and performed in a very, very valuable way. We also utilized a lot of new technology. I mentioned the smoke impacts. Without technology such as forward-looking infrared cameras and unmanned aircraft systems, we would not have been able to get significant intelligence on some of the fires due to smoke impacts, and they proved to be a great resource for us. I will end with this slide and just show quickly that over time since 2002, ODF protected acres burns remains somewhat constant, while you can see clearly that all the other acres, all other non-ODF protected lands continue to see a rise in acres burned each year, and we expect to continue to see that. Our complete and coordinated system is what makes it all work, and as our State Forester mentioned, all the partners in that are what make it work, but we continue to stretch it year after year due to the complexity and severity of the fire seasons. With that, I'll turn it over to U.S. Forest Service Regional Forester Jim Pena.